just you can also give me a piece of paper. Yes, otherwise I don't know how to. All right. So in the next 10 minutes, let's stay silent, and we can read. Everybody can read it silently, and try to see the meaning of it. After that, let's look at them together, shall we? Okay, let's now be silent and read it. Obviously, our life is full of issues. Personally, there are various mental challenges one has been going through, and also outwardly, economically, politically, everything is in disorder beneath the superficial order. When man is really sensitive, it's not difficult to perceive all of those. And for this occasion, we are not talking about any ideas because there are already enough ideas in society. People are pursuing various ideas, thoughts, but nothing is solved. The chaos is always there. It seems to be more and more urgent for one to find out what is actually happening in life. Not through words, not through theories or ideas, but one can perceive inwardly to find out actually, exactly what is going on in the world, the inner world, of the world outwardly, because it's the same thing, right? People's activities are dominated by the mind, by their inner processes. And what they have done, they also have an influence on the mind. So it is rather important and then necessary for one to dig into the psyche, to perceive what is going on there. They are not words. They are not explanations. You can't depend on anybody to tell you, because what you are being told are merely words, ideas. Rather, you must find out for yourself, to perceive, to give full attention to everything around you. That's to say, the mind must be highly alert and sensitive to everything around it. In that diligent observation, the mind can come upon what is actually taking place. And that insight will probably dissolve all the issues. But you need to find out. So in this occasion, the speaker does not want to persuade you or teach you anything. He has nothing to teach. But rather, we can start this journey together to find out, to explore. Perhaps during this journey, the mind can come upon lots of things beyond the verse. Is it possible for one to live a life without any conflict, without any contradictions? This whole world is in contradiction with each other. Almost everybody is against each other, right? Everyone has their own opinions, preferences, likes or dislikes. It is impossible for two persons to have the same preferences. seeing this superficial phenomenon, can one perceive and find out what is actually taking place on the mind? When one is willing to do that, that's to observe oneself completely. One can understand oneself. Therefore, one can understand everybody on this planet. Because the nature of mind, not your mind, my mind, the nature of mind is shared by each human being on this planet, regardless of language, people, or skin. Everybody's mind is dominated by the same principle. But can one compound it? That's to say, one must be diligent to observe oneself completely. To perceive that principle of the neuron cells. It is not something mysterious. It is not something spiritual. It is nothing about religion. It is very, very objective. But one must be willing to do that. Because most people tend to look outwardly. There are various things people can look for. Ideas, theories, philosophies, various cunning explanations, views. But they are all verse. Verse are never the thing. Right? Verse are verse. Here we are also using verse, but the verse are not the thing. The verse may point to the thing, but the verse are never the thing. So can one compound the thing? No, depend on the verse. Verse are very deceptive, can easily manipulate the mind, right? The verse can make the mind very cunning, creating various sentences, statements. But the thing is never the verse. We tend to depend on verse, then we stop to see the thing. Therefore, we are trapped in verse, aren't we? But can we pay attention to the verse and see the thing without being trapped in verse? That's the thing we need to do in the session together, because the speaker is using verse, and everybody must be in full attention to not trapped in verse, but rather using this verse as a mirror, and everybody must to perceive the actual thing, to find out what is actually taking place on the mind. So that's why truth is not speakable. One must perceive it. Truth is there. Truth is the principle of the neuron cells. Truth is the nature of the human consciousness. That's why it's very urgent for each of us to give full attention to the verse without being trapped in verse. The whole world, the society, is based on thoughts, not on truth. Our way of living is also based on thought for most people on this planet. But truth is not thoughts. Only when the mind is not trapped in thoughts, one can compound what is true. We don't condemn thoughts. We don't say thoughts are wrong. But we are observing it, observing the whole movement of thoughts, which are templates in the mind. Thoughts are divisive, aren't they? Everybody has their own thoughts, opinions, ideas. And everybody is holding onto their own ideas, thoughts. Therefore, thoughts breed division. And interestingly, this whole world is worshipping thoughts. We don't say thoughts are wrong, but when one is worshipping thoughts, perhaps there's something wrong there. Technologically, we use thoughts to create a wonderful technology, right? But why do we also hold on to thoughts psychologically? As long as one is holding on to something, which is a thought, there must be contradiction. There must be conflict. And when the mind is holding onto the thoughts, the mind cannot see the truth. The mind is trapped in its own personal experiences, views. So is that possible for one to perceive the limitation of thoughts? Again, we say that we don't condemn thoughts, but it is very important for one to perceive the limitation with thoughts. It seems necessary to use thoughts to develop knowledge, technology. But why do people hold on to thoughts psychologically? The speaker said that it is unnecessary to hold on to thoughts psychologically. But can we come upon and find out why are most people doing that? For a sense of security, people are holding on to some thoughts, ideas, for a sense of security. Is that so? But what is the consequence of that behavior? I mean, psychological behavior. Conflict, contradiction. And when that thought is being challenged, there's violence immediately. So obviously, one is not secure, right? Because when a thought is being challenged, one feels immediately insecure. It means that one's security is based on thought. But thought is never something stable, isn't it? The thought is always changing. When the mind is based on something unstable, for security, it is always vulnerable, isn't it? Perhaps we need to find out what is security psychologically. You know, in this world, there's a need for psychological security. So there are various books about theories, ideas, in the hope to give people security psychologically. But what is security psychologically? Why does one crave security psychologically? The mind is always want to cling to something, hold on to something, or grasp something. Perhaps there's no psychological security at all. There's no such thing at all. People may think the mind may have an illusion that I can grasp something for security. But when the mind has grasped something, issues immediately pop up. Can the mind not grasp anything? Just merely stay what is, without grasping anything. Please do it and find out what will happen. Can the mind stay with what is without grasping anything? Psychologically, there's no permanency. That's a fact, but can one see the fact now, perceive it? There's no permanency psychologically. But when the mind is grasping something or holding on to something, it is looking for permanency. But the truth is that there's no permanency psychologically. But can one perceive it? Can one feel this statement is true? When there's no permanency psychologically, when the mind is looking for it, it is against the truth. Therefore, it can never find it. But when the mind is still looking for it, the permanency, the security, there's only struggle for nothing, isn't it? Because you can't find it. The truth is that there's no permanency, there's no security psychologically. Physically, we do need that. Housing, foods, clothes, and so on, right? The physical security, we do need it. But there's no such thing called security psychologically. As we said, one must be able to perceive the fact that there's no permanency or security psychologically. Therefore, any endeavor to look for psychological security is only in vain, bringing about struggle and nothing else. So you see, they are not words, they are not theories. One must perceive it, the truth. psychologically, the mind is always fluctuating, changing. Nothing is permanent. And can one stay with that fact, not running away from it? When the mind is seeking security psychologically, holding on to something or grasping something, it is running away from the truth, isn't it? And there's only struggle for nothing. Perhaps all our mental challenges or problems come from this. Looking for something that don't exist. Therefore, there's frustration. There's agony or desperation. That's why, it is so urgent and very important for everybody to come upon the psychological facts, which are truth. And psychologically, one live with facts. Can one do that? Not with ideas or opinions or philosophies, but with facts. That's to say, one must be diligent and careful and sensitive to perceive those facts by observing oneself completely. When one is living with facts psychologically, thoughts stay in the right place. But when one is not doing that, one's life is taken over by thoughts. Thoughts are very convenient, right? They are carried by verse, and one can easily find satisfaction in thoughts without thinking anything deeper. But to come upon the facts, one must observe. One must put aside the convenience of thoughts. Most of us seem to be very easy to think because we think so much in every way of our life, every corner of our living. But to perceive is not to think. To perceive is to observe. is to observe ourselves as they are, as it is. When we think, we always tend to do something about something. But when we observe ourselves, the whole neuron system, something is there. So perceiving is free of efforts. But think is out of efforts. When we think, we make efforts. But when we perceive, we don't make any efforts. Is that clear? Because everything is there. When we perceive, everything just naturally come into the consciousness, right? But when we think, we make efforts, we concentrate on something, and therefore get trapped there. Maybe we can go a little bit slowly here. When the mind is thinking, the mind is concentrating on something, isn't it? In that concentration, more and more details pop up. And when the mind is concentrating on something, it cannot see the total part of the whole, right? Because concentration is always partial, fragmented, right? Therefore, the mind can be easily trapped in the fragment, losing the connection with the whole. So that's the result of the efforts of the mind. But when the mind makes no efforts, it perceives the whole. Therefore, something is there. Therefore, it can easily, naturally come into the consciousness. Can the mind perceive? And when we do our work, we need to think. Concentration is necessary in your work, right? But besides that, psychologically, can the mind perceive, not concentrate? That's to say, can the mind have no efforts psychologically? When the mind is making psychological efforts, it's looking for something permanent. It's looking for something can bring one the security. As we said earlier, it is in vain because it is looking for something that never exists. Therefore, the efforts psychologically only bring about struggle, struggle, struggle. Bring in various challenges, problems, endlessly. All of those is against the truth. The truth is that there's no psychological security. Therefore, stop looking for it. When one is no longer looking for it, one is free. But when one is looking for the thing that does not exist, one is trapped. Right? You see, so many people are trapped in their own ideas, their own issues. The more they make efforts to look for it, the more problems they will encounter. The mind is in illusion. Looking for something that does not exist is an illusion, isn't it? But when the mind is seeing the facts, it dispels all the illusions. When I say this, and then when I'm actually doing it, acting upon it, I no longer hold on to anything psychologically. Therefore, I'm in no contradiction with everybody on this planet. Because I see the fact, I see the truth is that as long as the mind is holding on to something, to look for something that does not exist, the security, that state of holding on to something or clinging to something must inevitably bring about struggle, suffering, contradiction, conflict. Not only with oneself, but also with everybody else. When I see that, I stop holding on to anything. I just stay with what is, stay with this uncertainty, stay with this impermanency. And there's more to discover than what the speaker can see. So that's why you see, truth pacifies aggression, dissolve argument. Right? When man is holding on to nothing psychologically, there's no aggression, there's no argument. There's nothing to defend psychologically. But when one is holding on to the ideas, opinions, they are always defending it. Therefore, you see, in our daily life, there are endless arguments because there are so many self-defendants, right? It is unnecessary. It is merely the dissipation of energy for nothing, right? Our life is wasted in that, not worth it, right? So can one act upon the truth? It means that I don't imitate anybody. I know that people around me have their own opinions, holding on to something, but I don't do that. Can one not imitate anybody? You know, people tend to easily copy each other, learn from each other. But when one is acting upon the truth, one is not imitating. One is applying the facts to one's life. So when one is doing that, I mean, holding on to nothing psychologically, one is really alone psychologically. One is no longer following anybody because one is applying what one has found out to one's living. One is light to oneself. And when you are really being that, you are making difference to the world. Right? Everyone around you is arguing, but you don't. You see the futility of it. Psychologically, you don't belong to any group, any community. You are alone psychologically because you are seeing what is true and applying that to your life. You see, when the mind does not compete at all, no one in the world can compete with you. It's the same thing, right? When you are holding on to nothing, psychologically, you are no longer competing with anybody. You know, when people have their own ideas, views, and they are defending it, every time they speak or talk, there's always some kind of a micro fight, right? But when you have nothing psychologically to defend, nobody competes with you. And then when you are being that, you become the mirror of everybody, right? That's why you see, it is, as the speaker has said quite a few times today, it is very urgent for one to compound the facts and live with them. When one has nothing psychologically, there's nothing to defend, there's nothing to hold on to, there's humility. You know, observation demands humility. When the mind is holding on to something, there's self-importance, right? When the mind has this self-importance, it always flexes muscles in various ways. Ultimately, you know, the exhibitionism is everywhere. Isn't it the same process of the inner self-importance? Like when one flexes one's muscles, one will inevitably encounter issues that dissipate one's energy and make one senile. This action does not agree with truth, and therefore it only leads to perishing soon. What is behind this prevalent self-importance is over-suffering. The contradiction, the conflict, due to this self-importance, make us disconnected and suffer separately. And when there's a self-importance, there's no observation, right? Because the mind isn't aware of that. To be able to aware of this self-importance and all the things that are going on in the mind, one must be humble. That's to say, really honest with oneself. When there's self-importance, one cannot be honest with oneself. Right? Because the mind thinks it is something. But actually, psychologically, we are all nothing. Right? Can one live a life being nothing psychologically? One can be anything outwardly, it doesn't matter. But can one be nothing psychologically? Anything that exists psychologically must be an illusion. Mustn't it? Like the security of various problems are created out of nothing. And we forget it's nothing. And we are trapped in something. That actually don't exist. So now let's have a break, maybe 5 minutes. Then after that, we can have questions together to discuss. Or if anything you want to talk about, let's do that, shall we? Okay.
Sorry, I really like your talk so far, but we are here as student researchers and we are doing a project on spirituality. And I was wondering if you would be open to participate in an interview sometime this week, maybe like a half an hour interview or something like that.
Sure. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe today. I don't know.
Yeah, the thing is we need to leave now, but later today
Later.
I could do it if
Yeah.
that works for you.
Yes. Okay.
Can you give me your number then, or email, or?
You can ask Joyce.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I will ask her.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And it was a really nice talk.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Bye.
We have to leave right now, but I wanted to ask to see if you could tell me anything right now. If we're, the part that I have trouble with is that if we're applying this truth that we found of perceiving ourselves to life, is it still possible for us to have beliefs and those thoughts?
Well, if one is really looking for something, I mean, is really observing something, that's nothing to believe or disbelieve.
Okay.
We don't say belief is wrong, but we say that when one is really observing, nothing to believe, nothing to disbelieve.
Okay. I think I'm getting it.
Yeah, because we don't say belief is wrong or something. But when you just don't hold on to any ideas, just observe. And when in that observation, there's no believing in something, right? No disbelieving in something. That's only what is.
Yes.
And stay with that. And then the one has no issues.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Sure. You're welcome. Very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So the camera can last for 2 hours?
I think so. I think so. It can last for longer, right? It's still working.
现在是在录制是吧？
连接错误。It doesn't matter.
没事，今天就是一个测试，今天的人来还挺多的，我没想到没有人来。好，那个人他也做一个 interview 啊，太好了，太好了。
他们是做什么的
interview 他们是做什么 culture and oncology 什么的，我也没听清楚。
？Oncology。
不是 oncology 是和 cancer 有关的，是吧？
啊，对。
我觉得他是 anthropology 还是人类学什么还是？
有可能。
我不知道。
哎呀，这个网太差了。